A cool breeze drifted through the open window as Joy stared at her phone. The message from her cousin Ino had just come in. I'm traveling to the village next weekend. You should come with me. Joy's fingers hovered over the screen, unsure how to respond. At 20, she had achieved so much. She was running a small, thriving online business and studying part-time. Joy was confident and hardworking, always chasing her dreams in the bustling city. But there was one part of her life she had never explored, the village. Her parents rarely spoke about their hometown. They were busy managing their businesses, keeping life in the city smooth and comfortable. Visiting the village was never on their list of priorities. Why don't you come with me? Ino had said over the phone earlier. It's been so long since your family visited. You're missing out, Joy. Missing out. Joy wasn't so sure. She imagined dusty roads, small huts, and endless farmland. What could the village offer someone like her? That evening, she sat with her parents in the living room. Her mom, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, was sipping tea while her dad read the newspaper. I'm thinking about visiting the village, Joy blurted out. Her mom raised an eyebrow. The village? Why? Ino invited me. She's leaving next weekend, and I thought, Joy hesitated. I've never been there, and I'm curious. I want to see where we're from. Her dad set the newspaper down, smiling. That's not a bad idea. It's been years since we visited. It will be good for you to connect with your roots. Her mom nodded after a moment. As long as you've handled your business arrangements before you leave, I don't see why not. Excitement and nervousness bubbled in Joy's chest. This was going to be her first trip to a place she'd only heard about in bits and pieces. What would it be like? What stories would the village hold? The week flew by as Joy juggled her work and preparations. She still wasn't sure if she was making the right decision, but something about this trip felt important. The sun hung low in the sky as Joy and Ino stepped out of the house, the scent of fresh earth filling the air. The village was unlike anything Joy had imagined. Small houses dotted the area, surrounded by lush greenery. Chickens wandered freely, and children played barefoot on the dusty paths. Let's explore, Ino said, pulling Joy along with a grin. They walked down narrow paths, greeting friendly faces along the way. Everyone seemed to know Ino, calling out her name and asking who her companion was. Joy felt a bit out of place but smiled politely, trying to blend in. Their first stop was the village primary school. The building was modest, with cracked walls and wooden desks visible through the open windows. Yet, there was a charm to it. Joy imagined children running through the fields, shouting and laughing as they learned and played. This is where I started school, Ino said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. We didn't have much, but it was fun. Joy nodded, trying to picture herself in a classroom like this. It was so different from the city schools she had attended. Next, they visited the town hall, a large, open space where villagers gathered for meetings and celebrations. A group of women sat outside, weaving baskets, their laughter echoing in the quiet afternoon. This place feels alive, Joy murmured. You haven't seen anything yet, Ino replied, her eyes sparkling. Come on, we're going to the stream. The path to the stream was lined with tall trees that cast cool shadows over the ground. When they arrived, Joy's breath caught. The water was crystal clear, flowing gently over smooth rocks. Women and children were washing clothes and fetching water, their chatter blending with the sound of the stream. Let's bathe, Ino said, pulling off her slippers. What? Here. Joy hesitated, glancing around. Of course. It's the best part of village life. Ino waded into the water, and after some coaxing, Joy followed. The cool water was refreshing, and soon, Joy found herself laughing as she splashed Ino. For the first time in a long while, Joy felt free, no deadlines, no city noise, just the simplicity of nature and the warmth of the village. She was beginning to understand why Ino loved this place so much. As Joy and Ino made their way back from the stream, the evening air was cool and filled with the sounds of crickets. The path wound through a small grove of trees, the golden rays of the setting sun casting long shadows on the ground. It was then that they saw him, a young man walking toward them. He was tall, with deep brown eyes and a quiet demeanor that spoke of humility. His name was James, and he carried a small bundle of firewood on his shoulder. His pace was steady, his gaze thoughtful, until his eyes landed on Joy. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. James's heart skipped a beat as he took in her beauty. It wasn't just her features, it was something deeper, something unearthly. He wondered if he was looking at a goddess disguised as a human. Joy felt the weight of his gaze and looked up. When their eyes met, a spark passed between them, intangible, inexplicable, but undeniably real. It was as if they had known each other in another life, as if their souls recognized something beyond words. "Good evening," James greeted, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "Good evening," Ino replied cheerfully. Joy simply nodded, her lips curving into a shy smile. As they exchanged greetings, James couldn't take his eyes off Joy. He was so lost in the moment that he didn't notice the jagged stone in his path. His foot struck it hard, and he stumbled, nearly dropping the firewood. "Are you okay?" Joy asked, stepping forward instinctively. "I'm fine," James said, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "It's nothing." Ino chuckled. "Be careful, James. You don't want to break a leg while staring at my cousin." James laughed nervously, scratching the back of his head. "I wasn't staring. I mean, he trailed off, unable to find the words. Joy smiled again, this time more confidently. "It's okay. It happens." As they walked away, Joy glanced back once, catching James's gaze lingering on her. Her heart fluttered. She couldn't explain it, but she knew this encounter would stay with her. James watched them disappear down the path, his mind racing. He had never believed in love at first sight, until now. The morning was heavy with silence, the kind that made Joy feel like she was being watched. She wandered along the edge of the forest, her thoughts drifting. The sacred tree stood tall in the clearing ahead, its twisted roots and thick branches casting shadows over the ground. Joy paused, remembering Ino's warning, "Never go near that tree, Joy. It's sacred. The gods don't tolerate disrespect." But it was just a tree, wasn't it? The day was hot, and Joy had been searching for a place to relieve herself. With no one in sight, she thought, what's the harm? She stepped behind the massive tree, unaware of the consequences her actions would bring. The village woke up to chaos the next day. Elders gathered at the town square, shaking their heads in disbelief. Joy's offense against the sacred tree had stirred the wrath of the gods. Strange things began happening around her. Her once bright skin itched and burned with strange marks, and she was plagued by nightmares that kept her from sleeping. Word spread quickly, and the villagers kept their distance. Children were warned to avoid her, and adults whispered whenever she passed. Even her uncle, with whom she was staying, avoided speaking to her. It was as though she carried a curse. To make matters worse, Ino had already returned to the city, leaving Joy to face the punishment alone. When the news of Joy's strange affliction reached her parents in the city, they wasted no time. They drove to the village the next day, worry etched on their faces. Joy's once radiant smile was gone, replaced by sadness and exhaustion. Her mother held her close, inspecting the strange marks on her skin. "We are taking you to the hospital right now," she said firmly. At the hospital in a nearby town, the doctors ran every test they could think of. Blood work, skin tests, and scans, all of it came back normal. "Medically, there's nothing wrong with her," the doctor said, puzzled. "Perhaps this is something spiritual." Joy's father sighed heavily, and her mother looked at her with questioning eyes. "Joy," she said softly, "is there something you're not telling us?" Tears welled up in Joy's eyes. She lowered her head and confessed everything: the walk to the forest, the sacred tree, and her decision to urinate there despite Ino's warning. Her parents exchanged worried glances but said nothing. Back in the village, they went straight to the shrine. The chief priest was waiting, his expression grim. He listened as Joy tearfully recounted her actions, nodding slowly. The gods are angry, he said. The sacred tree is not like any other. It is their dwelling, a place of great power. To disrespect it is to disrespect them. Joy's mother knelt before him. Please, what can we do to make this right? Tell us, and we'll do it. The chief priest stroked his beard thoughtfully. The gods demand that she take care of the tree. She must feed it, bathe it, and tend to it as if it were her child. Only when they are satisfied will I hear from them again. Her parents hesitated, but Joy spoke up. I do it. I don't want this punishment hanging over me any longer. Her father squeezed her shoulder. We are proud of you, Joy. You're taking responsibility for your actions. With heavy hearts, her parents returned to the city, leaving Joy in the care of her uncle. Each morning, she would walk to the tree with a bucket of water and fresh offerings. She would wipe its roots, sprinkle the water over its trunk, and whisper apologies to the unseen gods. Though she felt abandoned, she reminded herself that this was the price of her mistake. And even as the villagers avoided her, everyone stayed away, everyone except James. He came to see her one evening, his quiet presence a small comfort in her lonely world. You're brave, James, Joy said bitterly. Aren't you afraid the gods will punish you for coming near me? I don't believe the gods want us to abandon each other, James replied gently. You made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you deserve to be alone. His words, though simple, carried a hope that Joy desperately needed. Days turned into weeks, and James remained by her side. He encouraged her to pray and apologize to the gods, to seek forgiveness for what she had done. The tree became her routine, her burden, and her hope. She could only wait for the day the gods would finally set her free. Months passed, and Joy's life revolved around the sacred tree. Each day began with her walking to the forest, carrying buckets of water, fresh fruits, and flowers as offerings. She bathed the tree, tended its roots, and whispered apologies to the gods. Though it was tiring and lonely, she endured, clinging to the hope that her punishment would one day end. James's visits were her only solace. His calm voice and unwavering support reminded her she wasn't entirely alone. He often brought small gifts, fresh bread, a book, or even just a kind word. One sunny afternoon, as Joy was resting under the tree after completing her daily ritual, a messenger from the chief priest arrived at her uncle's house. He bore news that made her heart race with joy. The gods had forgiven her. The next day, the chief priest made an official announcement in the village square. The gods have spoken. They are pleased with Joy's service and have forgiven her. She is free from her punishment. Joy couldn't hold back her excitement. She ran back to her uncle's house and immediately called her parents. Mom, Dad, she said, her voice trembling with joy. The chief priest just announced that the gods have forgiven me. I'm free. Her mother let out a sigh of relief on the other end of the line. Oh, thank God. We've been praying for this day, Joy. We are so proud of you for staying strong through all this. Her father's voice came through next. Pack your things, Joy. We want you back in the city as soon as possible. It's time for you to come home. The thought of returning to her old life filled Joy with anticipation. She couldn't wait to see her parents, her friends, and her business. But as she sat in her room that evening, staring at the village she had grown used to, she realized there were things she would miss. And then there was James. He had been her anchor in the storm, and the thought of leaving him behind tugged at her heart. Still, Joy knew she had to go. The city was her home, her future. But as she packed her bags, she made a silent promise to herself, this was not goodbye, not forever. Back in the city, Joy felt like she had stepped into a different world. The bright lights, the fast-paced life, and the familiar comforts of home surrounded her once again. But something had changed within her. The village had left an imprint on her heart, especially James. One evening, as she sat with her parents in the living room, she finally spoke about him. There's someone I want to tell you about, she began, her voice filled with emotion. His name is James. He was the only one who stood by me when everyone else abandoned me. He encouraged me, brought me food, and never judged me. Her parents listened intently as she spoke. They exchanged a glance before her father asked, "Where is he from? What does he do?" "He's from the village," Joy said. "He's humble, kind, and hardworking. I wouldn't have made it through that difficult time without him." Her mother smiled. "If he's as wonderful as you say, we would love to meet him." A few weeks later, James traveled to the city to meet Joy's parents. He was nervous but composed as he answered their questions about his background, his values, and his dreams. Joy's father was impressed by James's humility and honesty. Her mother, too, saw the love and sincerity in his eyes. After much discussion, they gave their blessing, knowing that James was a good man who truly cared for their daughter. A year later, Joy and James were happily married in a beautiful ceremony filled with love and laughter. It was a union of two worlds, city and village, tradition and modernity. Not long after, Joy gave birth to triplets, 2 boys and a girl. Their home was filled with joy, the cries and laughter of their children making every moment precious. As the years passed, Joy and James made it a tradition to take their children to the village, especially during festival seasons. They would tell them stories of the land, the sacred tree, and the lessons learned from the gods. Through these visits, the triplets grew to love the village just as their parents did. They learned its history, embraced its traditions, and understood the importance of respect and kindness. And so, Joy's journey, from a city girl who had never stepped foot in her village to a woman who carried the heart of both worlds, became a story she and James would tell for generations. This is where we come today. End of the story. Please do not make it your last time on my channel. Subscribe, like, drop your thoughts on the comment section and share my videos to your loved ones. See you all on my next story. Bye.